everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Chris Bircher with CTC Software, and today we are going to be covering or beginning a series topic on how to clean your project and maintaining healthy, clean projects using a bunch of CTC Express tools. So this is going to be a multi-part series, somewhere in the range of 3 to 5, depending on how much gets covered, and depending on if we get any feedback from you all or anyone with specific issues that you would like to see covered. So with that, we'll just kind of start getting in here. So like I said, this is a multi-part series. And the reason why we are covering this topic is because, it can be cleaning up your Revit models and maintaining standards can be an extremely tedious process. Revit isn't exactly built to help you maintain that information. It's really quite cumbersome. So, and there's not a whole lot that is out there that we can do, So, so maintaining project standards can be difficult all the time. I shouldn't say at times, it's all the time. And setting up the standards is relatively easy, but managing on that on anywhere from 2 to 200 projects can be very, very tedious and time consuming, and coming up with an easy, repetitive process is very tiresome. And again, Revit doesn't offer any help. So, so today, what we're going to do over the next, couple of months, I guess, we're going to set these up every 3 weeks or so, is we're going to cover a series of tools to assist us with this. Today, we are covering Model Compare, Project Snapshot Exporter, and Project Activity Logger are the 3 tools that we're going to be covering today. And then just kind of progress down the line as I see fit, whatever makes sense as we get going. So, so today, with those 3 kind of tools in mind, we are going to go ahead and figure out and how they all work, how we can set up a repeatable process, and how to take this information and view it in a sense. So each tool has its own, or has a way of reporting on some of that data. So we're going to capture it, compare it, review it, and then take the appropriate steps moving forward in the next handful of webinars. So I don't like doing PowerPoints very much, so now I'm done, and we are just going to jump right into it. So that's not what I wanted to show you. This is so so of these 3 tools, the first one I'm going to start off with today is Model Compare. That's part of our project suite, and it's one of our paid tools. So dark green guys here. And what this tool allows us to do is capture data within our Revit files at a particular point in time, and then compare it to data captured in the past, or maybe we capture another version of that 2 weeks, 2 months from now. But it allows us to compare data from different points in time. So the way it works is you have, in this case, I've got my starter project open, and you click take a snapshot, and what it does is it'll bring up this dialog box here that allows you to determine or to define what you want to capture. Okay, whether it's by default that's set up to do the entire model, and when I mean entire model, I mean the entire model, to the analytical beam tags, bridge supports. I mean, absolutely every possible thing that we can extract, we're trying to capture the data for. Okay. So, and that's just categories. We can exclude categories. We can customize this list. Different types of data to include are families and their types, parameter definitions and values, things like project information, parameters, work sets, links, warnings, all on down the line. You can search by level, search by phase, search by view, or do everything. So by default, the default setup here is taking a snapshot of everything, okay? Now, in a template or starter file, that's not gonna take very long. I think maybe it took a couple of minutes, right? But on a 300 megabyte Revit model, this could take a while. I ran one not too long ago on a 200-ish meg model and took about 20 minutes. So it's not terrible. But again, you got to remember that it's tracking absolutely everything. So if any of you are familiar with our BIM data suite and some of the tracking that can do with its snapshot tools, which we'll talk about here in a little bit as well, it can take a while. So just be prepared. And what you can do is customize this list. So instead of capturing everything, we can uncheck this box and hit edit to refine the list a little bit here. So, say I've got an architectural template open, maybe I would have only want to track some of the architectural elements, right? Or I've got a structural model or mechanical model, right? So basically we'd go through and set up our filters or set up our settings so that, I'm not trying to record everything, even if it's not finding something, it's still kind of analyzing it. So if it's not in the model and it's not supposed to be in the model, we don't need to necessarily search for it. So come on. Yeah. So sorry, it's just taking a second to wake up here. And so basically what I end up doing is just kind of picking and choosing just the architectural elements, things like views, elevations, callouts, sections, annotation families, text, dimensions, some of my tags, and just elements that are in more like company standards, if you will, because we are very particular about what we want those to be and how they should be left alone in a sense, right? And then I would take those settings and run that on my template and then run it again on the next project to see if they're jiving, what kinds of things have changed. And I just wanted to show you guys those settings, but no, I can't. So I am going to stop this. There, wake up. Okay, I'm just gonna stop it because I just want to show. I don't really need to walk you through it. There we go. Let's try this again. So this is one of the reports that I'm going to pull up here in a little bit, multiple reports depending on the program. So what I wanted to show you guys is just the quick settings. I have snapshots already taken, so we don't have to sit here and wait for everything to cook. Neither of the snapshots that I took more than 20 minutes today, and that's, or any day, and that's just because of the files that I'm using. But I still don't want to put you through that. So once we get it up, I'll go ahead and show you guys how this is all panning out here, okay? So there we go. So let me pull this guy back down so we can see it. All right, so I've already taken snapshots But basically what I did was I went to load settings. I've got some template ones that I've done. This is a much smaller list of things to make them go lightning quick for the most part. But I've got some tags, I've got my dimensions, I got some view things, some simple things. And again, you can customize this list. And that's really all I changed. I left everything else alone. I just simplified the list of categories. And then I take snapshot, okay? And I've done that on the template and I've done it on a project. So now what I'm gonna do is compare the two. And so I'm gonna go ahead and load up the two that I did. So this one is the template file, and this is the project file. And now I can pick what do I want to compare, right? I can do everything. In this case, I happen to grab the two that are everything. Or I can pick and choose which elements or which categories or which annotation categories that I want to choose from, right? I don't have to do everything here. So in this case, I'm not going to worry about the families. I'm just going to leave those alone. In this case here, maybe I want to check things like walls, see what's different in the wall families. We want to do the views and the viewports, and let's see, what else do we want to touch? Those are the big ones. Phases, definitely, in text. Let's do those. Well, let's do, text is on the other side. Phases here, maybe design options. There they are, design option sets. Let's do those categories, keep it easy. And then on the annotation side, let's do dimensions, and let's do text. And I'm good with that for right now. Maybe we want to do revision clouds and revision cloud tags. I don't know if there's any in this one. Scope boxes section, since I saw them right there. And let's go ahead and hit OK. And what this will do now is it's going to open up both of these snapshot files that it took, and it's going to present them to me in kind of this big empty gray window that was back here. So, and here we're going to be able to go ahead and tell the difference between certain things. So down in the lower right, there's this little legend that is color codes everything for us. So we've got green where there's been no change, yellow, something changed. The blue color or the cyan color is the new elements that were added to the project file, if there are any, and the red ones are the ones that were deleted, right? So depending on how this was all configured and how it was set up, we should be able to tell the difference between a few of the items that I had selected here. So it's loading it up. It's coming. And now it's filtering everything out. So it's trying to parse through the list and remove the elements that I wasn't trying to view, which is just about everything. So just trying to keep the list short so we could see what was going on. While this is coming up, another thing we could do with this, and I'm just going to kind of jump into the next one a little bit because I don't want there to be any dead space here, is we have the ability to take this exact same snapshots that we took and bring them into another program, which is part of Data Suite, our BIM Data Suite. And we can actually, part of that setup is using a SQL database. So we can actually take these snapshots and load them into a SQL database for further reporting down the road. And that database also has a Power BI file that goes along with it so that you can view those reports in a much more eye-friendly format, right? If anybody's looked at, tried to view a SQL database before, it's kind of hard to understand. There's a lot, it's just a bunch of data right? So Power BI is much more friendly on the eyes and can take advantage of these snapshots and report those in a cleaner format. And we've provided a template file that goes really nicely. So here we go. Now we've got some stuff. So I didn't check much. So, but what this does is it's listing some basic info here on this tab, and then we can go to elements and parameters and the overall report. So here, things in yellow are different, right? So the file path is different, should be. Save dates, different, should be, right? Things like that. Families loaded. Here we've got 108 in the template. I've got 375 in the project. So someone's doing a pretty good job of keeping this clean for the most part, which means it's been purged and whatnot, right? So views, we had 1 in the template. Now I've got 146. I had 1 schedule, now I've got 37. So you can see how this has grown. And if you had taken snapshots of this file periodically through its life cycle, you could see some of these gradually increase and decrease and fluctuate as the time goes on. But what I'm going to do now is switch tabs and take a look at some of the stuff that's different, right? So all these blue items have been added at at some point during the duration of the project. So in the template, area boundaries and room boundaries technically existed in there, but none of them were drawn yet. So now that they've been drawn, that's technically been added to the model. Okay, but there were some columns loaded in at one point. Those have been purged. All right, so those are red. That's good. Keynotes and material tags, those are gone. A lot of new stuff has been added. So let's see what door families have been loaded in, just about all of them. So you kind of get the idea. And then apparently I think this template also had structural goods in it at one point or another, and all those have been since purged out. So that's good to see. So, but you kind of get the idea. And you can customize this as much as you need to so that you get the most benefit out of this, right? And I've seen a handful of different ways of going about doing this. Do them on full snapshot purposes, and then you can pick and choose how you want to compare the files with each other, and that's fine. Sometimes you don't have the luxury of waiting 35, 45 minutes for a report. You want to get something a little bit quick because you just want to know kind of the health of the model, how things are looking. Do we have a lot of in-place families? Do we have a lot of this unplaced rooms and things of that nature? You can do what's called a health check and just pick and choose some of the categories so that it goes a little bit quicker, especially if you know exactly what you want to see and what you're looking for. And as far as parameters go, I don't want to see dimensions. It'll tell you if project parameters have been added from the template, or if any, for scheduling purposes or anything like that. You can see if anything has been added that maybe shouldn't have been added, or if it was added as a project parameter, but it needs to be a shared parameter. There's a handful of things to go through here as far as checking on some of that stuff. In this case, everything looks pretty good. We've got some things were removed, no longer exist. Nothing important has been yanked, so that's good. And then you can save a report of this if you would like to Excel. If that makes things easier on you, if you want to be able to customize these reports a little bit further, set them up to be distributed amongst your user base or your teams, go for it. So, but it's just an Excel file that you can save out whenever you want. Yeah, I'm not really gonna show you that anymore. So, so that is model compare, okay? And the next piece is project snapshot exporter. and that's part of the BIM data suite up here. And this is the BIM data suite is a much larger tool that does various other things, but this particular element is effectively the same snapshotting tool as Model Compare is. And you'll see here in a second when I pull up the filters library that yes, it's the same window basically. It does the same thing. It allows you to take a snapshot of the model at a particular moment and for data comparison and tracking later on down the line. Just the location and the manner in which you do so is different with Project Snapshot Exporter and the data suite than it is with Model Compare in the project suite. So in Model Compare, we had our nice little color-coded window that basically looked like a fancy Excel file. What happens here with the data suite is it kicks out our exports. It actually puts them into a SQL database down here. And here we have all the snapshot categories. And if I wanted to go ahead and show you what this looks like, it is a bunch of lined data down here in the bottom quadrant or bottom third, and this is it. So if you can read this, great. If you understand what's going on here and you know how to use SQL in a sense, great. More than likely you can't or you don't want to. So we provide Power BI files, template files that are on they're part of the install, and you can go ahead and view the data here. Okay, so what I can do is change which project I want to look at and review some of that data there. So here's the file that I want to see. And this will present all of the data from either all records of it or a particular date and time. And this shows you as much as you've selected for it to report on, okay? So here we have just a basic overview so you can kind of get an idea of the number of parameters, component families, textiles, system families, what versions of Revit were used, right? How many families have been placed, but then we can go on down the list and look at project parameters of that file, see what's going on, what categories are a part of, check out the active work set list, right? See the categories and then, kind of what's on that work set, if anything. So these all have like click touch filters as you go through here. So I'm going to go to one that looks a little bit more friendly. So like component families, for example. Right. So how many families are loaded? How many have been used? It says, come on. So it's got quite a bit here to load up. And again, it's parsing out and just showing me data from a particular model, but you can see I've got 68 detail item families placed, 34 door families. And if I want to, I can start clicking on some of this stuff to hone in and get an idea of how many of a particular family are used. Are they using the appropriate detail items that we have provided, or are they downloading stuff from the internet, right? Doors, another one where it's important. We want to go ahead and make sure that we are getting just the doors that we want to use, right? Oops. So are these the right door families, or are people downloading inappropriate families from Autodesk or some other website, or from not Herman Miller, what's it? Anderson Windows and Doors or anything like that. Furniture, same thing. Are we getting, or equipment families? Are we getting families downloaded? Are they our families? So it's a good way to make sure that the right stuff is being used. Okay. Warnings, that's another big thing. How many warnings are in the file? What warnings are they? Are they easy to clean up, or are they a pain in the butt? Most of these, pretty easy to clean up. So we can start recording. The whole point of this is to easily see what's in the file And do I need to do anything to make sure that this file doesn't get out of hand? Okay. So we have the ability to, I can go ahead and grab a different file. Let me see if I have another one that I can use here. This one, I believe this has more records. Oh, it hasn't updated yet. But for the most part, this will keep track, well, not for the most part. This will keep track of everything that you've done so that you can go ahead and properly assess how things have progressed and take action. If you notice that the file size increased 100 megs in a day, well, why did it do that? What was loaded in? We can now see some of that from these snapshots and take action. Are there bad, did someone explode a couple of CAD files? Did we get a bunch of images inserted? Did a bunch of bad families get loaded in? Or just loaded in general? They don't even have to be bad. Did a bunch of stuff get loaded in and now it's just not being used? Right? You can kind of get an idea of what's happening based off the snapshots that you've taken. So, and this is completely customizable. You guys can do whatever you want with this. It's behind the firewall, so it's specific to your setup, and you have the ability to freely pick and choose what information you want to look at. If you have someone at your firm that is familiar with editing Power BI files. So it's really, really rather powerful, and you can get a lot out of it. So that's the Snapshot Exporter. And the last piece that I wanted to highlight for you guys is the Project Activity Logger. Now, what this can be found in a couple of different places. Our BIM data suite has a Project Activity Logger built into it so that we can record some data about the project files that are being opened and synced. But it's also part of our Hive content management platform. We have the ability to run project analytics there as well. And both of these are just little services that get installed on the Revit machine, and they are running when Revit runs. So the customer doesn't have to, or the end users don't have to worry about anything. It's going to be running in the background. Then as far as the data goes, you have a couple of different ways of viewing this stuff. With Data Suite, we provide another Power BI file that allows you to review some of the information. And this one's even a little bit nicer looking than some of the other ones. So this is my PAL report. And here, this gives you more things on sync to central duration. Maybe there's deadlines, number of users on a project, what the largest files are that you've accessed or that you've got going. So here we have, it's reporting the largest files in the database. If anything's coming up, we got a couple that are past and overdue. So I need to check on those and see if they're done. But we got a few things that are in the works. Sync to central durations. And here, what's nice about these is you can get an idea of what some of these outliers are and why maybe they were taking so long. Maybe this one was synced up from a Wi-Fi connection. Or maybe there was a bottleneck that day and a bunch of other things were going on. So we can kind of try to figure some of this stuff out as we go. So, and this will keep track of the projects. You can click on a particular project, get some information about it, what files are included, what users have been working on it, the elements they've modified, what they've added, what they've moved, how much they've done. So, and this is, and again, this one is more high level in a sense. This is the one that you would maybe monitor on a regular basis. This is recording every time a file gets accessed, right, by every user in the office. So it's recording a lot of information, but it's not everything. So this would be the one, this would be this tool where you would look around and see if the file size ballooned in a day or in a week or if someone reported having issues with a particular file, we can come back to this BI file, find out what happened, and go back and address it, or go review a snapshot of that file, and now we can see kind of what was added or maybe what happened. At any rate, this is a way of recording a bunch of data to make sure that things aren't getting out of hand. It's not going to tell me, you know, which rooms have a tag, for example, but it'll tell me what rooms are available. Maybe there are some that are not placed. It's just another way. It's another way of looking at the data that's being added to your project files. But I can get file size, sync durations, file sizes modified when they were modified. I can click on a particular project and get different recorded info out of it. So it's a pretty powerful tool, and it doesn't. You don't have to configure anything really, other than the database that it's being held in. We got warning data here to look at, view data. So you know, and it's one way of reporting things. You could customize this a little bit to run some filters and to see if people are using the right stuff. But that's more or less what, and you would do that with the snapshot tool. And review that here in this data, in this BI file. The last one I wanted to show you, it's another report that we have, but this is for the HivePal, and we have just recently released additional reporting features for HivePal. So Hive is our content management utility, and within that we have built in a project analytics tool. So there's a web interface for us where we can go ahead and review project information here. But you know, what you see is what you get here, for example. So you can't do much with this. You can't create additional tables or graphs to review the information that you're receiving. It just kind of is what we give you. So in an effort to allow our users to get access to some of this extra information, we have provided Power BI files and data downloads for you, so that you can go ahead and create your own setup and customize the visual results that you get. So we have a downloads tab here. You can download this and generate your own BI file, which will look like this. And you have the ability to set it up in we have a set up kind of in the same way that our website's doing, but you can also tweak this if you know how to manipulate the BI files. But again, we have it's another way of keeping track of this information and reporting on it. So here I've got an overview, large project files again, and a project summary where I can go through here and pick and choose which projects I want to review. Top contributors, the files, largest files. Excuse me. There we go. Click the wrong file. So you can see who's been working on them, which ones are the biggest, and start getting digging in a little bit further on these until you get what you want, or until you find what you're looking for. View counts, basic family stuff. I've got 123 unplaced families. Maybe I should go purge this file out. Right? So you kind of get an idea of what's going on here. And that's the idea. So we've got data capturing tools in 3 different locations effectively: Model Compare, Project Snapshot Exporter, and Project Activity Logger, and 3 different ways of reporting on it: Compare window, or BI files, or on the web effectively. So I'm going to open up for questions. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and ask in the questions bar or in the chat bar. We got you. I will do my best to answer them now. The next session will be in a couple of weeks, and we are going to be covering a couple more tools, probably from the BIM Manager suite, and kind of continue on with this process. So now we're going to be doing more of, we found some of this data, we've captured a bunch of information. Now, what am I going to do with it? What can I do to help clean up some of these files? And the next, 2 to 4 sessions will be using these extra tools to go back and do some cleanup here. So go back to our products, start getting into Import Link Manager, Dimension Checker, and probably Project Cleaner a bit next week or in the next session, which will be in a few days. So for those that need a recap on that, Project Snapshot Exporter is part of the BIM data suite, if you have that installed. So it's going to be this nice orange looking guy right here. And that is effectively the same thing as Model Compare. It just allows you to do a couple of extra things. One thing I neglected to mention earlier with Model Compare and Snapshot Exporter is these can be scheduled to run on through a Windows task scheduler. So either one, depending on which one you want to use, we have the ability to schedule this stuff. And all of it, there's instructions here. If you read the user guide, it kind of explains how it's all set up, but we actually have the ability to go ahead and have information run on a regular basis, right? So if you've got a project that is a high priority and maybe you want to pay close attention to it, maybe you take a snapshot every week, or maybe you've got a young project team working and you want to make sure that you provide as much assistance with them as you can. Take snapshots of the files on a weekly basis and review that and see if there's anywhere that you can educate your team a little bit more, right? But this is something that you would do on a weekly basis. The files can fill up quickly if you're doing them every day. So, doing them every week allows you to get a good idea of what's happening and how things are progressing as far as what's being added or removed from the files. So, but the scheduler is a really nice little addition, which makes it much easier to repeat and maintain for a lot of different projects or multiple projects at the same time. So you can use the same settings files on multiple projects. So it makes it really easy to do.